Welcome back to Founders and Fortunes, the podcast where we sit down with entrepreneurs, investors, and family offices to explore how companies are built, wealth is managed, and legacies take shape. Today, I'm joined by Carol Lavin Bernick, CEO of Polished Nickel Capital Management and former executive chairman of Alberto Culver. Carol spent nearly 4 decades in the family business, launching household brands like Static Guard and Mrs. Dash, driving a cultural transformation that became a Harvard Business Review case study and overseeing the company's $3.7 billion sale to Unilever. Since then, she's poured her energy into philanthropy and governance, from founding Enchanted Backpack and CC's Wishlist to serving on the boards of Northwestern Medicine and Tulane University. In this conversation, Carol and I dig into leadership, accountability, raising resilient kids, building culture, and the values that carry through generations. Carol, thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm happy to be here, Ryan. Thank you.
Thank you. And just taking a step back, before the executive titles and iconic brands, who were you trying to become growing up, and who shaped that vision most profoundly?
You know, I don't really think I knew what I wanted to become. Both my parents worked. They founded our company together. Business was always a big part of our dinner conversations. It was my first job out of school. After I got a job offer from Bristol Myers Squibb, I told my dad that I might go work for the competition, and I ended up going to work for Alberto, obviously. But I don't think I really thought too much about it. When I was a little kid, I was going to be a stay-at-home mom in a small house because my mom worked and I missed her, as a little kid.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what happened. It's not what happened with my daughter. All of us are kind of a fourth. My daughter talks about herself being a fourth generation working mom. Just kind of who we are and what we do.
I love that. And I think that, obviously you mentioned your career began with the family business at Alberto Culver, and new product development. You drove the nationally recognized cultural overhaul. You talk about that in your book. Ultimately, you oversaw the company's sale to Unilever. Looking back, how did that chapter shape your philosophy and philosophies?
And I was there for 37 years, so your life changes a whole lot. And, I wrote Gather As You Go mostly because I've had a bunch of major bumps in the road. And I thought that people could learn from me. But you say, how does it affect me, over time and who I am and everything else? I mean, it's very, very close to my parents. My brother or my sister ever came to work for the company. I worked there for a number of years. We had a great HR guy who came and said, we're going to do a survey of all the people and see what they think. And I said, I'm going to give you a group of people my parents might listen to. Let's go to those 40 and then go do your own random 40. And it turned out that their feelings were pretty much the same, and they frankly shocked me. People didn't feel connected to the company. They thought it was a great place to come for quick learning and leave. They didn't respect how we were growing our business. It's really kind of traumatic because I always thought I was a people person, and my own group of people seemed to be happy, but the general population was not. So, and frankly, we weren't doing that well. So the combination of all of this, affected me deeply because I always thought I was a people person. But long story short, and it was a long story, we instituted a culture change that took probably 6 or 7 years by the time every piece of it started working the way that we wanted it to work. And I've always liked people. I've always been connected to people. My mom, so much of what I am today, my parents grew up, my mom grew up food insecure. She had a mother who went to work in the 1940s for General Electric. And my dad was probably lower middle class. And they always made it a point of, you love people for who they are, not what they have. And we worked in a factory. It's not like we're doctors or lawyers working with accountants. We worked with people, hundreds of people in our factories and our accountants and all the rest. And, to grow a company like that, you need to be connected to all different kinds of people. And you need to, respect them and trust them and teach them and grow them. And I mean, when we sold the company to Unilever, people say, what's my regret? It was the right time to do it. And that's a very interesting story. And we can go into that if you want. I think my biggest regret is when you have a company. I mean, at one point we have 25,000 employees. We own the Sally Beauty Company, which is 3,300 retail beauty salon stores, which had, a whole lot of part-time people, and that gave you the numbers that totaled up to thousands. But the consumer products side had 3,500 people, and it's not just that you have 25,000 people, you have 2,000 families, and then you have all the families that support all the products that we make, and then you have all the suppliers, and it's America. It's what you do when you're growing a company like that, and how important it is to the community and all the rest. So I'm probably getting off subject a lot, but I don't even in high school I was girls club president at New Trier High School. That's a pretty big deal. It's always been about people to me. It's always been about people to me. So the culture change, which was recognized by Harvard Business Review and was published in two of their major books, we actually taught all kinds of companies. After that, we taught Chicago Tribune, the British Broadcasting Company, the Marriott Hotels, how we turned our people and got them connected to who we are and what we do. I'll just say one other thing. I've been on the board of Northwestern Healthcare for decades now, and I have the privilege of being so far the only woman chair of that healthcare system, which is, a top 10 in the country now. But when I leave those meetings, I go, they save lives, we make shampoo. How am I going to make our people feel like there is passion for what we do? And so much of the culture change. I'm actually writing a book on innovative philanthropy right now. And one of the chapters is how to see phenomenal corporate growth via philanthropy. We actually connected all that we did to, we had a saying called powerful growth yields the privilege to care. And the more money we made, the more we could improve our families, our employees' benefits, the more we could take care of charities, the more we could partner with outside organizations. And the whole philanthropic side of what we did became such an important driver and got our workforce engaged and excited. I don't even know what your question was anymore, but
No, it's fine. I guess what's more interesting is you mentioned a regret, and you touch a little bit in a lot of it actually in Gather As You Go about that whole process and the emotional turmoil going back and forth with your parents, where the business was. And I agree based off that assessment that it was the right decision. What was that regret? Was it people related?
you know what? Alberto was a funny situation, if you will. We were the fourth largest hair care company in the United States, which is big. We had the fastest growing hair care brand for the last 3 years, and Tresemme. We had on a phenomenal track.
Mm.
Frankly, Unilever came, I heard at a convention that Unilever was going to make a run at us. Tresemme was so successful that we were being knocked off by a company called Sias. Henkel. We were knocked off by Henkel with a brand called Sias that was copying our package, copying our message, professional, affordable. And everywhere that we went, we were successful, but everywhere we weren't, Sias was trying to make, inroads. We were going to take our earnings down for the first time in decades and go into Brazil and Japan, two big hair care markets. And I was just about to present that to our board of directors because we would have literally reduced our earnings by millions of dollars. We needed to spend $60 million to enter those markets. And I heard at the same time that Unilever was going to approach us. Well, guess what? You don't want your stock to go down because you're entering two markets and then have a company of their size come at us. And it was too big to be acquired by private equity. It was too competitive to Procter and L'Oreal and the rest of them. The Justice Department never would have allowed a merger to happen. So in fact, Unilever was the only one that really could have ever taken over Alberto. The regret was, honestly, we were a family founded New York Stock Exchange company, and we had, a huge chunk of the company, but we didn't have 50%. So if we'd been a private company, we never would have sold, but we never would have been the size we were if we were not a public company. So all kinds of different aspects of, looking at a decision like that.
Yes, very complicated. And pivoting in the other direction, and thanks for expanding a little bit more on that, talking about Northwestern. And you've served on some of the most influential boards in healthcare and education, Prentice Women's Hospital and Tulane University. How did those roles expand your perspective on leadership and impact?
You know what I say to anybody, lots of people always want to know who were my mentors. And of course, my parents were my mentors. I worked with them every day. But I have all of these incredible CEOs on these boards in Chicago and in New Orleans that had no idea they were my mentors. I'm sitting on boards with the biggest CEOs in the city of Chicago, and I mean, huge companies. And I'm just watching. I'm just learning and I'm watching and I'm seeing when they speak and when they don't speak. I'm seeing the ones who talk too much and I'm seeing the ones that when they open their mouth, the whole world listens. I see when they challenge, I see when they don't. Now, I think I joined Northwestern Healthcare when I was, I'm guessing, 38 or something. I sitting there for 30 years watching these, world-class leaders. Oh, talk about influencing, my perspective. Flipped to Tulane on a I'm on a board of a university in the Deep South with all the black-white racial issues. And then Hurricane Katrina hits, and I'm vice chair of the board at that time. And 80% of the university's buildings are under some level of water. And I mean, come on, it's like how do you react? What do you do? What do you do with this? There's no faculty housing, the library's underwater. You learn through experience, you learn through crisis, you learn through how other people work together to make things come back together. I am now the immediate past chair of Tulane. I was laughing about this last night with some people. They said, well, how was it? I said, well, we had COVID and I was chair, but 85% of our classes were on ground, and we're probably only one of the only universities in the world who made their budget during COVID. We had two hurricanes, one of them very significant. Those are way beyond Katrina. We had a lawsuit from a major person in our medical center that turned out to be settled and was kind of a garbage suit, but it disrupted us for almost a year. We had the racial issues in New Orleans that you have with all the statues coming down and all the rest. And then we had the Israel Hamas thing where, Palestinian supporters show up with multiple trucks on our lawns, and I get a call at 3 o'clock in the morning that the president wants to bring in the Louisiana State Police because the New Orleans police wouldn't help us. So it's like, I'm okay that I'm no longer chair. It's an amazing experience, and Tulane is on a fantastic trajectory. And I think the other thing that's so cool about the boards that I've gotten to serve on is the CEOs that I've worked with are phenomenal. And if they're not, you better change them because, the only one who really has power in any of those places is the CEO.
Yes.
But in both cases, I worked with phenomenal leadership. And we went through some very significant times. When I was chair of Northwestern Healthcare, we merged with our first four hospitals. I mean, we were always a high quality community hospital. Now we're, I think, ninth in the nation and have merged with, I think there's 11 hospitals that we've merged with now. But it's, again, I go back to it's all about people. It's 100% about people. People feel part of the team, walking in with the big purple bus, which would have been scary to everybody with the Northwestern name on it, taking people from their leadership teams and making sure they have significant new spots on the overall team. I mean, it's, to me, 100% of leadership is about people. It's strategy without question. It's culture, without question. But you have to gain the respect of the people and you have to bring them to your team. And how I've been successful anyway.
Yes, and I picked up on so much of that. I really tore through Gather as You Go when you had sent it to me, and I loved the focus on emotional and intelligence and leadership, but the emotional aspect specifically. And I have a couple questions here that I wanted to kind of go in deeper with reference to it. One of them that stuck with me was in the section of "Don't undermine your message." And you wrote that people, they won't remember what you told them, they'll remember how you said it. How did you or have you refined your voice and presence as a leader without losing your edge? I find that could be a tough balance.
You know what? I guess it's just experience. My father, who was my boss for a long time, and my ex-husband, who worked with me for years and was also reported to my dad, whatever else. they would ask for 18% growth. They would scream and yell about having to get it. I would set growth of 12% and under promise and over deliver. Or you can't threaten people and tell them if they, you can't threaten people and tell them if they don't improve their sales performance, they're going to be gone. If they're not capable of achieving their sales performance, and you've looked at a couple of measurables, which I am a big believer in, you change what you measure, you hug them and you say goodbye. So I think a big difference between my leadership styles and my dad's, and he was fantastic. We wouldn't have had the company without him. He was my best friend. I could go on and on. But he would institute a lot of programs and people would wait for them to go away. They knew that they would eventually go away. If I was going to institute something, I was going to make sure that we followed through and that we did it so that the next time we instituted a change, people would be sure that, we weren't going anywhere. I think everybody hates firing people, but you can do it with a sense of grace. You can have a conversation with people that says, it's not working for you and it's not working for us. You're a really good person. How can I help you get settled in some place where you're going to be happier and do better? It sounds soft. I'm not soft. I'm tough, but I'm told I'm very fair. And it's not ever about personalities. It's about the statistics. You change what you measure. What are our goals? What are we trying to do? How are we going to get it? How is it going to happen? I have this saying that says, I ask it about almost everything. What are we trying to do? How much will it cost? How will we measure success? That's the key. And when will it be done? And if everybody has those measurements and we're in agreement with them and we know what everybody's trying to do, okay, maybe our timing changes by 6 months. Maybe the brand didn't get introduced. Maybe the product quality wasn't what it needed to be. But if we're always focused on what we all want, then assessment of people's performance gets pretty real. And I love to celebrate success. I love to, they say, throw champagne on it in the Harvard Business article. It's like I love to parties. I love to give people presents. I love to do all kinds of girl things that I've been accused of. But hey, if you look at our track record at Alberto, our stocks shot straight up. And we had a lot of people who made a lot of money and a lot of people who made more money than they ever thought they could make because they had stock options at Alberto. So
Certainly.
I think, I look at this guy, Dean Harrison, who was the CEO of Northwestern so long while I was working with him, and extreme emotional intelligence, very good guy, always present, always willing to talk, but focused, knowing where he wanted to go, and doing a lot of collaboration with his board members, having individual conversations before you got to the board meeting, making sure people were, in sync or get their questions answered before they walk in a room. I think you can be very kind and very decent and very tough and grow successful businesses.
Well, I love that, and I think the idea of accountability, which is kind of one of the pillars of your leadership style, and you've spoken a lot about that as an empowering factor. Accountability is empowerment, and you touching before on the cultural overhaul, which is something that today I think gets talked about. It's almost becoming a platitude, unfortunately, where it's all these businesses, it's like, oh, we're about culture hire this, culture that. But how did you create a culture that embraced accountability rather than shied away from it?
Well, you know what? We did culture before it became popular.
Yeah.
Our culture changed. I took over a long time ago. I took over the consumer products business in 1993. Our pre-tax profits had gone from 12% in the late 80s down to 2%. When I was wasn't handed, it was a 2-year negotiated change almost with my father, but we could talk about that too in, succession. So our board wanted to sell the consumer products part of the business. Sally was going straight through the roof and consumer was, almost, underwater. And we made a fundamental mistake. We started selling VO5 shampoo for 99 cents. So we were, which is ridiculous because it had always been a mid-price brand, but we followed Watch Swab and and everything happened. And all of a sudden we're running our factories around the clock and making no money. on a bottle of shampoo. Culture for us, we had 15 different measures that we were substandard to what we should have been. Our turnover rate was twice the average of people in our industry. The lousy people stayed, the fantastic people were always recruited away. And, I took a group of 8 people and we sat down and, unfortunately, they were all men, but they were in charge of all the different divisions. And,
Okay.
the question was put forth. It's like, do we change the business and the people feel better? Or do we fix the morale or do we fix the business? And I basically said, we have to do both. We have no
Hmm.
choice. We will not grow the business unless the people feel better about it. And until the people feel better about things, our business won't grow. And we just, year by year, we did various different things. I do a 2-hour seminar on culture change, so we could spend the whole time talking about that. And I'm happy to if that's where you want to go. But it was a process. And, it's like a Harvard Business Review. I would have paid millions of dollars to get them to come and do the story. But they found us on their own, which is very cool.
Something that I really enjoyed reading about your personal story was several points, was the relationship that you had with your parents as, workers, as business people, but also the relationships that they had socially and professionally. And I remember you talking about the pain that they had when a lot of their friends and mentors, but friends, personal connections were starting to get quite old and passing away. And you urged them uh, to reconnect with newer, younger people. And it really resonated with me, the idea of that dilemma. Could you talk a little bit more about any of those in detail?
Gather as you go is a book. It's 300 lessons learned. And I am a very popular speaker because I am free and because I bring my book. And we've reprinted Gather 3 times now. There's 40,000 copies out there. And it's a book on life's lessons, if you will. But my mom and dad were very successful. I mean, it's amazing. In 1955, they bought the company for $400 million. They borrowed it. Okay. It's in what? 400,000. Oh, I'm sorry. Debbie's sitting here going $400,000. By 9 years later, it's $100 million. I mean, due the present cost of money. I mean, that was a phenomenal success. And my dad was in Time Magazine and all these honors and all this fantastic stuff. The company plateaued after that. We could go on into, what happened. But the point of Friends is that a lot of his friends were like 10 years older because he was so successful and invited into clubs earlier and, just got in with a group of people who were about 10 years older. So now as you get older, those people go away. They
Hmm.
pass away, they get sick, they whatever. And my parents were very social people. In the last 10 years of their life, there weren't too many people around that were very close to them anymore. I urge people to make younger friends, to have people
Right.
on this earth, as long as they are. But, my dad was my impossible boss for a lot of years. And literally, we had a 2-year negotiated board change in management. Howard and I were going to leave the company when we were 41, I think, or my parents were going to turn over the business to the next generation. And they finally did. And the business took off for lots of different reasons. But I would spend a lot of my time trying to get my dad connected with other people so he would stay active. And by the way, when he retired, he never retired anyway. He became entrepreneur in residence at San Diego State. He started
Mm.
the at Foster Business School at University of Washington, the Lavin uh, Entrepreneurs Program. I mean, he taught and encouraged kids until he was, I don't know, 93 and 4. It's pretty
Wow.
amazing, pretty amazing. But yeah, I sold Alberto a lot of years ago now. It was 2000. And, I'm 73. I was at a party last night that I gave for a group that came in town from Naples. And they go, well, why aren't you at the club more often? I go, well, I still work. And they go, well, why do you still work? I go, my father said you retire, you die. And I think that's been ingrained in my head. But I don't know.
I think he's right.
I want to be relevant. I want to be working with my kids for as long as I can. I want to be influencing the community and I'm having fun. So And the good news is that my life is my own, so I can do it from Naples, Florida, where I'm now a resident because Illinois has crazy estate taxes, or I can do it from here. Or I can do it when I'm out of town on buying trips for my charities. I can, run my business from anywhere. But I think the key to being happy after you leave your, people say 9 to 5. I never had a 9 to 5 job in my life. I had a 5:30 a.m. till 9:30 at night job. But, the key is to do fun things with important people who are still thinking and still driving and still moving and I have 8 grandchildren, I was going to say, and not just talking about their grandkids. I adore my grandkids and I have great fun with them and they are very close to me, but they're not the only thing that life offers, at this age.
Right. And I mean, to the ways that you give back. And we met at Denny Sharad's event in Chicago 2 years ago and talking about your
Free
family.
speaker, free speaker.
Yes, yes. And it was a great speech, I thought. And I still have them with me, the letters that you printed out that you wrote to your family, which is incredible. And I work with family offices on both sides of the business, some thought leadership and PR, and then on the other side, my clients with, deal flow and stuff. But I being connected with a lot of different single family, multifamily offices, there's always, it seems, this chaos and madness about succession, next generation. But you had such clarity and purpose with those letters. I thought it was incredible. I was happy to dive a little bit deeper into the way that you run your family and the identity and gather as you go. It's something I thought that was interesting. In the welcome to our family section of your book, you said that you encouraged your kids' partners to work with a therapist before marriage. How did that practice evolve into your broader philosophy about integrating family into legacy building? I thought that was interesting.
I think I'll back up just a little bit in that.
Please.
My brother died of a drug overdose, and he had a drug problem for decades. He has a son. I'm
Sorry.
very close to him now, but Scott died at 48 or something. My sister lived on a mountaintop in Colorado forever. Neither one of them, my sister's not married. She writes music, but neither one of them uh, productive in the sense that you want your kids to be. So it became very important to me that I would raise kind, caring, capable kids who would grow into productive adults because I saw the chaos on both sides of my family and I was not going to let that happen, especially as being a working mom. It's like I live 4 miles from my office. I mean, I did a lot of things to be closer and do all the rest. So in growing my kids and trying to raise my mother always taught us she loved people for who they are, not what they have. And that came from a upbringing where she didn't have much, right? And her brothers weren't at the same level as we were. And they belonged to a country club, but they had lots of friends from younger years. And honestly, some of their friends were billionaires and some of them made $50,000, $60,000 a year, and it didn't make any difference to us. So also working in a place where you knew you were growing up in a factory, at least I worked on the Ritzway line when I was a kid. And we lived in River Forest, and our office was in Melrose Park, again, 4 miles from the office. I was going to work with factory workers and chemists and, line workers and salesmen. I wasn't going to be working only with, professionals with MBAs from whatever. I made sure my kids had jobs. They had menial jobs. I wanted them to realize how hard it was to make money. And as they grew up, I wanted to be open and honest with them and have them understand that letter you talk about. We are very significantly wealthy. We worked our butts off and Alberto grew like crazy and we, invested well. But my opinion is that money is to last for as many generations as humanly possible. Same, mode with me. So I do everything. My middle son is our chief investment officer. He's a Vanderbilt Kellogg guy and very, very, very smart. And he manages our investments. And my rule is get as much down to the next generation as you can, and you will get as much down to that and onward and whatever. So they know very much what we have. That doesn't mean I can't change my mind. My kids have known from the time they were little people that prenuptial agreements would be part of our lives. In fact, my wills say I have 8 grandkids right now. They are 6 to 12 on Friday. It says in my wills they
Happy
won't
birthday.
they won't inherit unless they sign a prenup. So this is not about the people. It's about what I believe is the right thing to do. So honestly, we live very well. That letter that I bring to conferences, any of your people can ask for a copy and I'll be happy to send it. But it sets forth what we believe. And, it's our job to privilege to care. I mean, it's our job to give back. It's our job to grow capable kids. It's our job. My trusts allow us to cut out a kid if they do screwy things because my parents never put that in their wills. And, my brother burned through massive amount of money for the wrong purpose and such like that. So I don't know. I'm very close to my 3 kids. I work with all 3 of them. They're all in some way related to our family's businesses, various businesses, and I'm lucky. I mean, there's no question that, we live well, we travel well, we have great educations and beautiful homes, but we are always planning for the money to move down. We also grew the family portfolio significantly in generation 2. Usually it's generation 1 and it's gone by 3.
Correct.
But we added significantly to the pot, and we're all focused on the same thing. Now that there's 8 grandchildren, I mean, they'll each have 2 or 3 kids. Pretty soon it'll be, but not pretty soon. The oldest is 12, not not for a long time. But I don't know. People ask me what are the things I want from my grandchildren more than anything. I want them to uh, have delayed gratification, okay? Because I have a family member, you could guess which one, but I have a family member who, if they want it this minute. They can't wait for a Christmas present. They can't wait. It's just bad. It's a bad thing. But more than that, I want them to have resilience, because
Yes.
life is not easy, and life comes at you hard, and people need to be able to understand, that things go bad and things get better. I heard a great child psychologist from CHOPS, Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, talk at a conference one time. And he said the whole Montessori generation was a bad thing. And I didn't put my kids in Montessori, so I don't have any personal preference either way. But he said the kids grow up and their butterfly is beautiful and everything about what they do is fantastic and it's great. And, but then they go off to high school and their butterfly's not so special, right? And all of a sudden they're living with, you are not the center of the universe and life is not just about you. And when life gets tough, they don't really know how to handle it. And it made some sense to me. But yeah, I
Certainly.
think I heard somebody else speak at a BDT conference where they said if it's a broken neck, step in. If it's a broken arm, leave it alone. Where kids, we should not rescue our children as much as we tend to want to do. And so far, it's worked for me.
Absolutely. And one of the stories I'm reminded of is Scotty's big girl bed and how that taught you a lesson about patience and responsibility. How did that moment crystallize your beliefs on
Well,
building resiliency?
I'll say 2 things.
Sure.
So we planned for this big girl bed for months, for months. And we picked it out and we decided on the colors. And then we looked and we were going to get this special unicorn comforter. And, this little girl, was she 4? Yeah, I think 4 or whatever, going from a toddler bed to you know, she was thrilled. And, it's that old, there's that psychological test. Will they eat the marshmallow or will they
The
leave it?
marshmallows.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think it's just it's critical to have them wait for certain things. And, it just makes sense. It just makes sense. They make Christmas lists and then the lists change. We start making them on Halloween and then they change again. And, and then when Santa finally brings something, it's better. And I have some kids who live on the North Shore of Chicago where um, Aviator Nation is commonplace, which are very expensive sweatsuits if you don't know what those are. My daughter lives in Oak Park River Forest where there isn't quite as much money and we don't wear Aviator Nation. We're going to be respectful of the other kids around us. And it's good for them to, obviously they can have anything in the world they want. It's just not. My kids still say I give them too much, but I give them a lot less than I could give them. I'll tell you that.
And
I think building
yes,
is really important.
and especially today, and I'm 33, I'm turning 34 in September, my generation, and then my youngest sibling is 20, 21. For, I suppose, your grandchildren, and you talk a bit about this, and you touched on it now, being grounded has nothing to do with money. What does staying grounded look like for you now in a world that so often rewards the opposite, social media? And do you find that a challenge, or your children, do they struggle with that?
I mentioned that I'm writing a book on innovative philanthropy, and my sons asked me to write this book, which I am not a writer, and this will be my third book. But I asked my
I think
kids,
you're a writer now.
it's Carol speak. I don't write well. I really don't. It's Carol speak, and I prefer pictures to words, so you'll see that. But there's a section in it where I asked for my children to speak about what they're doing to raise kind, caring kids who give back. And it's heartwarming to read what my kids remember and what they did. But like my daughter, Lizzie was a Title I teacher, and she taught for 7 years. Long story short, a friend of ours child drowned and at 2 years old. Devastating. And she decided to go and get what she calls survival swim lessons. And I didn't know
Mm,
what the heck she was doing. Her kids were 18 months and 2.5 years, and she was going to Oak Brook, Illinois at 6 o'clock in the morning for these swimming lessons every single day for 6 weeks. And I thought she was crazy until I found out that drowning was the #1 cause of death for children under 5. Lizzie has now started a foundation called the Cass Water Safety Foundation, where she teaches other adults this method, and they go on to teach other children. And we give, I think, thousands of scholarships because it's an expensive process. It's one-on-one
sure.
teaching. But in so doing, she became connected with the Paralympic Committee. She teaches autistic children. She has, a whole bunch of people who come in and do this. She doesn't do it by herself. But the kids, her kids, who are Scotty and Abby, are 8 and 9 now. Or no, I'm sorry, they're 9 and 10. They're connected to the Paralympic Committee. They play with kids in adaptive sports. We'll play games with kids who are in wheelchairs, and the whole concept of, and it's commonplace to them. It's
Mm,
like, I adopted families for Christmas every year, and my kids would go to the store with us. And I remember them being aware that the kid wanted a blanket and a pair of pajamas and a toothbrush. And, my kids wanted, I don't know, the spaceship from Star Wars or something crazy. And I made them use some of their own allowance, and then we went and bought the kids more stuff and everything else. And now Scotty, my children have adopted that to their kids, and they adopt seniors and they do stuff and whatever. It's like it's such a fundamental part of who we are to give back. We have these charities that you know about, and yeah,
oh, yeah,
and the kids, it's just part of. I think you raise grounded children by exposure. There are so my mom's food insecure, and there was a time when I left. I was cleaning out my refrigerator and I threw out some moldy cheese, and I threw out a head of lettuce. It was really brown and gross, and I threw it out. And I came back an hour later, and my housekeeper had taken it out, cut off all the moldy cheese and cut off the brown leaves, and asked if she could take it home to her neighbor who was having trouble, and that would be their family dinner. And here I thought I was really good with this stuff because my mom would keep every bit of extra food, and we drive it down under the viaduct and everything else. And I go, okay, okay. So now my grandchildren, there's a refrigerator near where they live in Oak Park where extra food goes in the refrigerator, and it's near a shelter, and people just go and take it out. And it's just part of our life's learning. It's just, if you've got extra chicken legs and such like that, and you're not going to eat them, they go in the special place in the refrigerator, and, it gets driven to the pantry. So I don't know, from the time kids are little, I think you build in values of what you believe in.
agreed. And let's go into that philanthropy area, because I know that's huge part of your life. Enchanted Backpack, Cece's Wishlist, Bobby's Memorial Initiatives. I like the idea of dignity in giving that you discuss. Quiet giving, but also being structured, efficient, specific. What does dignity in giving look like to you, Carol?
Okay, um, it's a long story. We're going to try to make this short. We were going to underwrite a charter school in the city of Chicago, and it was a very big gift. It was a $5 million gift. Just started off. It's going to name it not my dad. Normally, we don't put our name on things, but he was in his 90s, so he was excited about it. And the politician shut it down after 3 different attempts at 3 different schools. The politician shut it down. So we created something called Enchanted Backpack. And Enchanted Backpack, based on a lot of my daughter. I mean, she taught in Title I schools, and one of the most fun things I get to do is go set up her classroom. Well, we probably spent $2,000 on setting up her classroom, maybe three, because it had nothing. Well, teachers make 38, 42, 45,000. I mean, it's like if you don't have money, setting up a classroom is almost impossible. So at first we thought we would create a free school supply store. But then when I did the math, I realized it would cost us $3 million to give away $2 million worth of stuff. So we created this amazing charity called Enchanted Backpack. And this is for those people who want to retire. I get to do two of the things that I love to do more than anything in the world. Maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration. I get to bargain hunt, and I really get a kick out of getting underwear for 35 cents and t-shirts for 65 cents. And I like Las Vegas, and the show's 4 times a year in Las Vegas. So the combination of those two things, I literally buy everything that goes into the Enchanted Backpack bands. I go with another person in my family office, and giving new things with tags on it to children who have nothing is kind of magical. And when you give away, like everybody gives away their old clothes, I would make my kids sort through their old clothes, and I wouldn't let them give away stained things. I wouldn't let them give away toys that had a broken arm. I mean, it's not anything. It's having the dignity to understand people want nice things, you know. If your block set is in good shape, give it away. If it's broken and chipped, throw it out, and it was an important thing. So Enchanted Backpack, we go to 20,000 children a year. We give them everything they need in a school, art equipment and athletic equipment and coats and hats and shoes and every school supply they need, 2,500 books to each school. And we do it with, we turn quarters into dollars. This became important because when Alberto was, a family controlled New York Stock Exchange company, we gave away millions of dollars a year. And our family foundation gave away millions of dollars a year. But when we sold Alberto, half of that money that we were giving the community was gone. And all these organizations we worked with for my 37 years, we really take away a big chunk of their money. By creating Cece's Wishlist and Enchanted Backpack, I knew where to sell clothes out. So just to explain, when you're a manufacturing company, you change your label, you change your fragrance, you change the cap, you change something. And Alberto had $8 million worth of junk to get rid of every year. And one year when I was very young, I had to get rid of it. Well, that was at cost goods. Now, maybe you only get $4 million for your $8 million at cost goods, but you do it at close-up shows. There's these shows in Las Vegas called ASD, AMD, and the Off-Price Show, where I literally buy winter coats for $8 to $10, good ones. And I buy shoes for children between $2 and $5. My average price for books, and I'm talking about DK and Scholastic and high quality books, is $2.50. So we deliver $40,000 worth of retail merchandise to every school we go to. And it costs us about $11,000 to do it for a school, you know. Uh, and I have fun doing it. And we were buying so much at these shows that people started chasing us for blankets and towels and sheets. And I go, well, kids don't need blankets, towels, and sheets. The prices were so inexpensive, and our foundation money could be used so more effectively by giving, very wonderful gifts in kind. So we now support 100 charities between Chicago and Florida with pallets of soft goods. Again, I like to shop for them. I love to get the deals. The charity is run out of our office. 100% of the administrative costs are covered by our family foundations. And it's a real kick, and it's making an amazing difference in the communities where we're lucky enough to participate. So it's also
And
staying relevant.
yes,
Staying relevant. It's doing good things. It's having fun while you're doing it. And when those children will not take those price tags off their coats because they've never had a new coat before, it really tells you something. Or two.
I love that. And it sounds to me like it started off as a one-off project. At what point did it become more of a lasting mission and what it is
Well,
today, the growth?
we had agreed as a family to honor my dad with this $5 million gift to the charter schools. And we were going to be a charter high school. It was going to be called Lavin College Prep. It was going to follow Tulane University colors. We had our values. We'd done everything. And so we looked at ourselves in the family and said, we're going to take this $5 million and what are we going to do with it? And we started with Enchanted Backpack and then Cece's Wishlist. And, we still support a lot of Chicago charities and we do a lot of wonderful things. But if you go on our websites and look at the videos on these two charities, I would
Hmm.
be surprised if it didn't drop a tear or two. And you know what? The interesting thing is that you ask how it became a mission. When you realize the impact you're having on these schools that are in dire straits, it's just our schools have to be 50% or more free lunch. And we all know there's poverty out there, but you don't get it. So, I mean, when the principal comes to you and says, "Can we keep these plastic plaid bags because they'll be able to keep our homeless kids' stuff dry?" It's like,
Hmm.
sure, you can keep the plastic bags.
Yeah.
And I think we've done it in a very smart way. We meet with our twice a year. We meet with teachers and social workers from some of the schools we've gone to, and we say, "What don't you need? What do you have too much of? What do you need more of?" And we added shoes because you know people would be cutting off the toes of the children's shoes, for their feet to grow. And we're very smart. We're marketers. We're very smart. Nobody knows what's coming in those vans. So now the cry for deodorant is much, it's a lot of noise about kids smelling bad in fourth grade and other kids not playing with them and people being embarrassed and staying home because their clothes aren't clean. So now we put washers and dryers in most of these schools too when we send deodorant, and we might not send index cards anymore or earbuds, but we send the stuff that they want. So it's a phenomenal program and we're getting a lot of recognition on it now, and people are starting to help us a little bit, which is good. And yeah, we look at it's fun now. We sit at a family meeting and look at how much money is in our foundation and how many years out we can carry these programs and what do we have to do. And the kids are very much involved in it. So it's a pretty special thing. My grandchildren at 6 years old know what Enchanted Backpack is.
That's awesome. And
Pretty cool.
very cool. And I had a follow-up question there, although you kind of answered it, but I suppose I'll ask it anyway, and maybe you'll have something else to say about the concept of legacy and your legacy and the family legacy or even Enchanted Backpack. How do you think about that, not in terms of the brand, but in the unseen ripple effects of the work?
You know what? When you have a company like Alberto Culver, that is your legacy, right? And when you sell it, you don't have that anymore.
Yeah,
And the reason my kids asked me to write this book was because, I have very smart children, and the philosophy as a family foundation is innovative philanthropy at work. And we give our money in ways that are not typical. I'll give you a quick example. And I think this will continue to be our legacy, whether it's known by other people or just within our family. It's still our family legacy. So COVID happened, and my son-in-law was from the south side of Chicago, and he had a kid who was in his wedding who happened to be in his living room, and he got really emotional. The 6'3" Italian kid said, "I got to fire my people tomorrow. They were shutting down." And it's second generation family pizza restaurants, two of them. I said, "Well, what could we do? This is Bernick. There's nobody eating in the restaurants." I said, "Go find a church who wants your food. Go find a church who wants pizzas for the next 2 months, and I'll carry it. Well, I'm going to make a donation to the church. They're going to pay you, and we're going to keep your restaurants alive." It ended up being called Feed It Forward. We kept something like 88 restaurants alive. We
wow,
had like 150. Debbie's over here saying 150 restaurants alive
almost twice.
through 50 plus charities. Through 50 plus charities. So we would go to a charity and say, can't be a chain, has to be a mom and pop taco place, a pizza place. So we want small restaurants, and we will make a donation to you if you tell us who your restaurants are, and you will pay them. And we ended up putting $3.5 million in the community during COVID and saving. I called Mimi LeClaire at Boys Club and Josh Hale at Big Shoulders. And that was when I said, I'm thinking, and this is in April of COVID 2020. I mean, it was literally the third week of March. Literally, we had been home a week. Okay, it was the third week of March, and we have all these citations from the city for doing it and such like that. But again, it's innovative philanthropy. How can we
Yeah,
keep these? And here's the other thing: the mom and pop restaurants, whether you like immigrants or not, and I think our country was born on immigrants. I'd like the border to be controlled, but I think we need the immigrants here. Those
agreed.
people weren't getting government funding. They were getting, it's like they're not on any register. So these people would not be eating. So these restaurants who very often have, undocumented workers, we have letters that would break your heart and how touching they were. But our legacy is innovative philanthropy work. And whether I talk about that or whether I talk about, I mean, I have 52 different things that we could talk about. I'll give you one other one, which is really a good one. At Tulane University, they went into
Please.
financial exigency after Katrina, and it was deadly. Our salaries of our professors at that time were not quite at average, so we weren't in a great place to begin with, and we froze hiring and we froze all open positions. We froze salaries. Now, you know, I agreed with it. I'm on the board, as vice chairman of the board. We had to do it. I understood it. But I went to the president and I said, let me tell you something. I'm going to give you a donation and you're not going to exactly like it. I don't want this money managed by the provost or you. I wanted a rotating committee of faculty members that would change every 6 months.
That is smart.
But I'm going to give you $1 million a year for 5 years for faculty grants. And I want them to be able to do their research, hire their assistant, work in their labs. I don't want you to lose the most important assets of this university, the faculty. And nobody had ever given the faculty money before, and they could apply for, I think, up to $25,000 grants. And it's amazing. When that was over, 5 years later, the university president came back to me and said, there's nothing you could give us that would be more impactful than this. Our research has gone up 7 times in the time
Wow.
doing this, and millions and millions of outside NIH funding and all the rest of the kind of stuff. So it's like I looked at it and said, I'm a people person, right? Take care of the most important assets of the university. I don't know what they would have done with that money, but how are we going to keep these people motivated and here? And so that's another innovative philanthropy at work. I'm a marketing person by birth, and finding the hole in the market and figuring out how to create a niche and, creating it in a way that is powerful and impactful. That's the kind of stuff that we tend to do. So that, I hope, is our family legacy. I hope we continue to make change in this world, and we don't need the fanfare. It's, I challenge my kids when they want to give money to an organization. I said, well, you can give it to general fund, and you give to the general fund. Yeah, you're filling some buckets. Can't you come up with something more creative that can
Right.
move the needle for them? Because you might just be smarter than what they're thinking about here. And that's just stuff we do.
I love that. I graduated from Stony Brook University with my undergrad in English. I'm glad I did. I'm not the best student, but my sister's a PhD candidate at Baruch, so I'm privy to some of the issues that with funding. And I'll speak sometimes with I'm part of the alumni network for Stony Brook, so I'll get calls. And I've never heard of a solution like that. And I'm sure, I mean, obviously it speaks for itself, the growth that the university has
Well,
had with
and
that. That's
you can't
incredible.
believe first of all, everything's always budgeted, right?
Right.
When you throw money on top of a budget that is clearly there to be used, as confetti dust, if you will,
Yes.
$10,000, $15,000, $20,000 is life changing to a person
Yes.
who's trying to get, more materials for their lab science thing. And it's been very fun. I get these amazing paperback books with all these things in it and all these experiments and all this stuff. I don't read them all, but I like it. I like having the book. And I went on to be chairman of Tulane. I mean, people come up to me and thank me that I've never met, never seen, never whatever. And it's finding the niche and being able to improve something in a significant way. And you don't have to make a lot of noise about it. You just have to look and go, hey, maybe we need to do this.
Yes. And I know that we're running short on time, as predicted by Debbie and yourself. So I have a bunch more questions I want to ask, and maybe we can have you back on before or after you finish that next book. I'd love that. So I'll jump towards, some of the final reflections and then a lightning round if that's okay. Okay. So you've built companies, legacies, the next generation too, with grandchildren. What are you still becoming?
I'm learning to be smarter. I'm learning to be more selfish with my time. I'm learning to do things that bring me joy and not just the rote. I'm trying to build memories with my kids individually. I just want to be there. I mean, last night and the night before, my granddaughter broke her arm and sat at
I'm
Lurie
sorry.
for 9 hours. We have a building across the street with our name on it, but my daughter is not going to call and ask for extra help. Okay, the next day, the kids hand is swollen and, she's in terrible pain. I go, Lizzie. So Liz took her to the emergency room. I said, I'm calling a friend. You got to get this kid seen. There's something wrong. And sure enough, fabulous hospital, love it. They did invent the cast. And this little girl had massive pain. It's like, I'm going to be there for my kids no matter what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, where I'm doing it. I want them to know that they can count on me at any time, which, I think I've always been a mom like that, but it's rewarding to try to take the pain away from your kids if you can and such like that, enough time to do it. So the other thing is like I've been on a bunch of boards. I like helping people. I like helping families. I speak around the country probably 15 times a year. But now I get to do it when I want, how I want. And I say to anybody, just as I said to you, yes, I'll do this podcast. I will do anything for one day. I will be on any board. I will go sit in a strategy session. I will help people. You can have one day of my life, but I'm not joining any more boards. And I get some nice invitations every once in a while, but I want my time to be something special to the people who have it. You know, that's just so I've got a little bit of me time now, if you will.
I'm all about that. I think that's excellent. And touching a little bit more towards your family, what's one lesson you want your grandchildren to understand before life teaches it the hard way?
Life is not fair. It's not fair for everybody. And if you can one by one help somebody, then you're making a big difference. And we have a sign in our home that says, be kind or leave. And I have told people to leave. And children that are just little brag, you can't stay here. See that? See that's enough. Yeah. I mean, some of them don't like me, but I don't really care. I've said the scariest thing about life is that I have children who love their children, and we have really good little kids. It's hard. Every single day, it's a course correction. Every single day you're watching them go off, the rails, or their friends taking them off the rails. It's like what scares me so much is all these children who don't have parents who adore them, because there's millions of them out there that don't have, the structure to help them grow into good people. So, the knowledge that you can change somebody's life just by being kind, I think it's important for them to know. It gets them in trouble sometimes because they get 52 phone calls from the kid in the class that nobody else wants to play with. Stacy, she keeps calling me. I go, yeah, I don't know what to do about that. But it's okay.
So, if a founder or next generation leader is listening and feeling like they're not enough, what would you tell them heart to heart?
If they're not enough, I don't know what that means.
If they feel like they're not enough, they're struggling, they're having self-doubt. I know it's quite a general question, but
Okay, I know now. So the smartest people I know ask for help. When I became chairman of Alberto, I called 3 people that I barely had met. Chris Galvin, who ran Motorola, and I went to 2 professors at the University of Chicago. The smartest people I know ask for help. When Sally Blount, who is the head of the Kellogg School, left to do what her next stage was, I called 10 women. I said, come have dinner with her. She's not sure what she wants to do. And Sally said, you do that for me? I said, yeah, let's get 10 smart people, put them around a table, and let's see what they say. And, the validation of her and her resume, we're all imposters. And
yes,
I honestly didn't figure out until a few years ago that I'm pretty cool.
you are.
Kidding you. I mean, my resume speaks for itself, but we all are the people we were when we were little kids. And I had an intimidating older brother, and, he squashed me down a lot. And we all have insecurities. Believe me, people will help you if you reach out and you ask. And that's what I would tell somebody who thinks they're not quite enough. It's like go get some good people around you who will share. When you share your vulnerabilities with people, you get closer. I do these things called table of 8, and
Mm,
I did it. Are we out of time?
no,
I did it at the Tulane board meeting. So I've been chairman of the board for a long. I've been on the board for a long. There were 2 guys who were very noisy who I did not like, and I've been listening to them for years. But when I became chair, I made a donation to the university to pay for dinners 4 times a year, and we went to fun restaurants in New Orleans, and I called it Tables of 8. And I didn't let spouses come; I just wanted board members there. And I had questions because I asked questions I don't want to talk about pickleball or golf all through my dinner. I want to get closer to people. So I had a list of questions, and I took these two jackasses to my table because I didn't want them to ruin somebody else's table. Well, I asked the questions. One of the questions after we did the intros and all that stuff was, what's one of the toughest things you had to live through, and what'd you learn from it? I literally cried that night. What happened to one of these men, and pretty serious what happened to them. One had a wife who had a debilitating illness for the last 8 years, and another one had lost a child to a and it's like, I didn't know these people. I just saw them in their business setting, but I didn't know them as human beings. So, I'm a huge believer that you can connect with people and get deeper with them, and it's pretty darn magical. So if you don't know who you are, you don't know where you're going, or you're founder with questions, just call a few people and have the courage to say, I need some help. Could you give me an hour of your time? That's all I want is an hour of your time. And believe me, I learned all kinds of things being the new chairman of Alberto. My father and my mother, because they founded the company together, you would sit in the boardroom according to longevity on the board. So even though you might be the coolest person in the other world who just joined our board, you're down there at the corner. When I became chairman, I sat in the middle and had name cards and moved them around. And it was like life-changing to these people. It's such a thing, but it's kind of like everybody's equal here. Everybody's important.
Yes.
Tricks of the trade that you just learned from listening to other people. So I'd say ask for help.
I love that. That's, very Japanese style, right? I think they put the most important person closest to the door, and then the farther away, and you made it more of a round table.
Yep.
I like that. So last couple questions, like the lightning round. You can be as short as you'd like or long. What's one mistake you're glad you made?
I was going to say, I'm glad I got divorced. I don't know if that was a mistake. I don't think it was a mistake. It's like it's a real negative thing in my life that I thought was the world's worst thing in the entire world when I called my 30-year marriage over. Really glad I did it. Really, really glad I did it. So is that a mistake? I don't think my marriage was a mistake. I had, 3
No.
fantastic kids. But I am glad I called it because I am not somebody to break up a marriage in 30 years. But glad I did.
Yeah, I think that's fair answer. What's one sentence from your parents that shaped your life?
People for who they are, not what they have.
What's one thing you'd never outsource, no matter how busy you are?
My children's weddings that I did, my creativity. I don't outsource parties or events or Christmas or gatherings. I pour my heart and soul into it, and it's how I show love.
When are you most proud of who you are?
When I'm watching my kids do something amazing.
I love that answer. Carol, it's been a privilege to dive into your story and the wisdom you've earned along the way. I know our listeners will walk away with ideas that you discussed. They'll love this.
Well, I've enjoyed it and look forward to talking to you later, Brian, about more stuff.
Yes.
And,
I'd love to have you back.
thank you. I would love to come back. If people like what we've said, then I would love to come back.
Well, I think they will. Thank you so much, Carol, and thank you, Debbie. Bye-bye. That's it for today's episode of Founders and Fortunes. A huge thank you to Carol Lavin Bernick for joining me and for sharing her story with such honesty. If you want to learn more about Carol's work, her book Gather As You Go, and her initiatives like Enchanted Backpack and CC's Wishlist, you'll find links in the show notes. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And if you know someone who would get value from Carol's insights, please share this episode with them. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time on Founders and Fortunes.